weekend. I did went to church yesterday. Went Christmas shopping for the kids. Uh, this Christmas is going to be a really fun one. But yeah, today's topic is going to be over something I think a lot of people struggle with, and I do want to start by saying this. This isn't a motivational video. This is for people who are tired but still trying. So today I want to talk about a word many people don't like, and that's discipline. In the Bible, discipline is not about God being angry with you. It's about God loving you too much to leave you unchanged. In Hebrews, it tells us the Lord disciplines the one he loves. It also says God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. So sometimes God allows pressure, pruning, and correction because he's developing character that comfort could never could. God is more concerned with who you're becoming, than how you feel in the moment. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace. For a long time, when I heard the word discipline, I thought it meant punishment. Like I had to become harder, stricter, colder, almost less human in order to change my life. And honestly, that belief kept me stuck because deep down, I didn't hate myself. I just didn't know how to take care of myself without escaping. What I've learned is this: real discipline doesn't come from self hatred, it comes from self respect. I didn't change my life because I hated who I was. I changed it because I started respecting who I could become. And if you're afraid that growth will turn you into someone arrogant or emotionally shut down, this video's for you. Um, And just remember that refusing discipline hardens the heart and dulls spiritual sensitivity, which is how I lived the last 15 years of my life, right? And that's because for most of my life, the discipline felt like pressure. It looked like forcing habits I didn't believe in, comparing myself to others, numbing out instead of dealing with what I felt. And it became a really bad habit, especially, thinking I had to be a stricter parent or I had to be a tough friend, a tough partner. I wasn't really sensitive to a lot of things. But I was gaming every day. I was scrolling endlessly, distracting myself so I didn't have to sit with my thoughts. None of that made me lazy or broken. It made me human. But those habits were coping mechanisms. They helped me survive a version of life I didn't feel aligned with, especially with video games. I used to say all the time that video games um, was like my favorite passion, my hobby. But honestly, it was just another reality for me to escape in. I was playing video games for 4 hours, thinking I've only played for 10 minutes. And I missed 4 hours of life. And I'm not saying you can't play video games or love doing it, but is it a coping mechanism, or is it a a hobby, something you really enjoy doing? And for me, that reality was it was a coping mechanism. I don't play video games anymore. I don't think about it. I don't crave it. I don't have any thoughts of just 1 minute wouldn't hurt. Nah, I don't. Honestly, I don't care. So, so yeah, I mean, but here's the truth that no one talks about. Discipline built on guilt eventually collapses. When you try to change your life because you're ashamed of yourself, you either burn out or you become bitter. And I was definitely burnt out. Anger started to show, resentment started to show, more walls around me started to show, and literally, I don't want either of those. I didn't want to hate my old self. I just wanted to understand my old self and move forward. So, and that shift happened when I stopped asking what's wrong with me and started asking what kind of life do I want to sustain. And that thought changed everything. Um, Literally now, what I'm doing is becoming more responsible. I mean, as a father, as a person, as a friend, and I started to handling. I started to handle my finances not because I was trying to prove something, but because stability is a form of peace. I recently, got my first credit card, started paying off debt, and it wasn't for status or ego. It was because chaos is too exhausting. Being broke is too exhausting. Spending money carelessly, and then regretting it was just stressful. Um, I also started to change my look, not to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel aligned with when I looked in the mirror. Um, and I feel like that, I never really had a identity, and so I was kind of just, putting in bits and pieces here and there of who I thought I wanted to be, but in reality, I never had an identity. I never went shopping for clothes. I just got what I thought I liked. Um, so recently, I was going to, one second. Sorry, I'm still at work, y'all. Um, so yeah, like I went out, got some clothes I thought looked nice, and how I want to present myself, shoes. And it made me feel better. It made me feel better inside. It made me feel like I know who I want to be or who I am. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to. The person I looked in the mirror is the person I wanted to become. Um, I stopped gaming not because it was evil, but because I didn't need to escape my life anymore. I changed what I watched, what I consumed, what I allowed into my mind. That was the biggest thing, because I used to watch a lot of scary movies, a lot of, evil stuff, and just, it just didn't make me feel. But yeah, so, um, what you consume is kind of how you become in a lot of cases. And I knew that I didn't want to consume any demonic or evil things because it can really taint your soul, and that's what I felt. So, and none of it came from punishment. I just, I deserve a life that doesn't require constant escape. um, that's when discipline stopped feeling heavy for me and started to feel more grounding. um, and also, that's kind of where my faith changed. For a long time, I thought walking with God meant trying harder, being better, looking more spiritual. But real faith didn't ask me to perform. It asked me to be honest. And I think that was the biggest key and realization of a lot of things was just being honest, well, not just with the people around me, but with myself, with God. It started with God, just being really, really honest. And, when I started to be honest, it started to give me more um, aligned with my feelings, if that makes any sense. So, I didn't come to God cleaned up. I came tired, confused, still figuring things out. And what I learned is that God isn't interested in exhausting you. Discipline with God isn't about becoming rigid, it's about becoming aligned. Um, so I stopped asking, how do I look faithful, and started asking, how do I walk with honesty today? Sometimes that meant action, rest, even silence. Faith became a relationship, not a scoreboard. And that was something that I come in terms with too, like, oh, I want people to see like I'm becoming more faithful, I'm becoming more, you know, aligned with God, and it's honestly, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it'll show in itself. But one of my biggest fears was this: what if discipline turns me into someone distant or judgmental? And here's kind of what I learned. There's a difference between boundaries and walls. Boundaries protect your values, walls protect your ego. And that really, really hit hard too because I had a lot of walls. I mean, layers, layers, layers of walls just around me, and I couldn't become who I am. I was hiding behind those walls. I didn't grow by judging people who live differently. I grew by choosing myself quietly. I can be around people who don't share my values without absorbing their habits. And that was a tough one for me too, because I was around a lot of people where I have developed their bad habits, you know. And I'm not blaming them, right? I'm my own man, but that was telling for me. Um, I can listen without agreeing. I can love without participating. I can stay kind without staying stuck. Um, Distance doesn't mean superiority. Silence doesn't mean arrogance. Sometimes it just means you're stabilizing. So a lot of times I'm super quiet. I'm not ignoring anybody. I'm not um, trying to be cold or distant. I'm just trying to stabilize my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings, and understand them more than anything. Um, and I constantly remind myself this: my discipline is for my healing, not my image. The moment discipline becomes about being better than others, it stops being healthy. So here are ways that you can develop healthy discipline, which is rest, laughter, flexibility, grace. Sometimes I'm focused. Some days I'm tired. Both are allowed. If your discipline makes you anxious, rigid, or emotionally shut down, you're probably doing too much. Real distance shouldn't make your life. Well, it should make your life quieter, which which is internally, right? You feel more quiet on the inside, and that's kind of how I feel at the moment. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel you know sad or anything. I feel quiet. I feel like I'm at peace internally. I'm not battling or struggling with the like I talked about on the last topic, which was spiritual warfare. I'm not dealing with any of that right now at this moment. I'm sure I will have seasons where I will collapse, but now I kind of know what to do in those situations, and that's just to rely on God, read the Bible, and really ask questions. So yes, discipline should make you quieter inside. It should make you steadier, more peaceful. It should give you a space to feel and not force you to suppress. Discipline isn't about becoming extreme, it's about becoming sustainable. I know we listen to these guys. I have a book right here, Jocko Wilkin, David Goggins. Those are great human beings, but their discipline is pretty extreme. Um, but you have to get right with yourself inside first before you can go to that extreme. That's true. And in closing, because I'm about to finish up here, let me ask you this: where is God correcting you right now? What habit is He calling you to change? What area is He trying to strengthen through discipline? God disciplines you because He's not done with you, and you have to remember that. His discipline is not because He's done with you, it's because He's not finished with you. So just kind of remember that, and God, well, in Hebrew, it reminds us that God discipline is for our good. So you don't have to resist it, you don't have to resent it, just receive it. And if you're afraid to change because you don't want to lose your heart, I get it. But growth doesn't require you to become cold, it requires you to become honest. You don't need to hate who you were, you don't need to shame your past. You just need to care enough about yourself to choose differently today. If your discipline is teaching you to love life more, if it's bringing you peace instead of pressure, if it's making you more grounded, not superior, you're doing it right. So take it slow, stay human, and don't quit on yourself in the middle of becoming. Because that's where the growth starts to happen. But yeah, that's the topic I had for today. It was about discipline. Um, and because I fight these battles with choosing what I want to do versus choosing what I need to do, and it can be a tough because you can always run back to comfort, and go right back to where you were, or you can break down those walls and become somebody better somebody new, but always live your truth. Always, don't pretend, because when you pretend, you tend to dig yourself in a digger hole because you have to build up off of what you're trying to pretend. And that's why I started doing this stuff, started making these videos, because I am not pretending anymore. I am, living my life the way God wants me to live it and being the man that I know that I am. And hopefully, you can too. So just remember that. Don't resist it. Don't resent it. Just receive it. Know that you're going in the right direction, because that's where it starts. All right, guys. You guys have a good one. I don't know when I'm going to post another video, just because I will be off. Well, maybe Friday. So I think I'm going to do every Monday and every Friday will be the schedule, and I'll post these videos. So yeah, you guys have a good rest of your day.